modifications that need to take place to the minutes as they are written? If none, I'll entertain a motion.
To approve?
Second. Ms. Carrillo?
Teratio,
Yes.
Barron.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next order of business is the adoption of the agenda. Ms. Carrillo or Administrator Brown, do we have any changes that we need to make to our existing agenda?
No, ma'am, we don't.
This time I'll entertain a motion to accept the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda?
Second. Ms. Carrillo, call for the vote.
Teratio,
Yes.
Barron.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Our next item of business are items for discussion and/or action. The first item is the Midlands Workforce Development Board terms. And you can find that information and some backstory on those starting at page 9. And Ms. Teratio and Mr. Weaver, just as a bit of information, in the past, when I think around November, December of last year, we were trying to really come up with, we were interviewing, and the Workforce Development Board is one that is unique, where you have to have certain individuals from certain areas to be covered. And in doing so, we had a conversation about perhaps we should look at different term lengths to be able to make sure that we don't have all of the individuals coming off at the same time. And so we entertained this conversation, and we asked for a bit of information, asked our clerk's office to get with the board to see if they could give us some type of guidance. So as moving forward, when we interview for these positions, then we can note that perhaps someone from the education sector has a 2-year term, or someone from the public sector has a 3-year term. We know we have a little more specifics. And again, this is one of those committees that is very detailed in who we can and who we cannot appoint. And we have a representative from the committee here today, and I would like to yield a little bit of time to her to kind of give us some guidance as to what you all are looking for coming from our appointments, because what we don't want is just to be merely a pass-through, but we do want to also provide you with candidates that you need, and looking at lengths of times as well. So if you will, please. And if you'll just state your name for the record.
It's already on. Okay. I'm Tammy Began with the Midlands Workforce Development Board. Can you hear me? A little. How about now? Is that better? Okay. Thanks for allowing me some time to talk with you today. I'm Tammy Began. I'm the interim director with the Midlands Workforce Development Board. We apologize in advance for how complicated we are. We understand we are complicated. We are a federally mandated board, so we come down with federal guidelines, and we're governed sort of by the Department of Labor, sort of by the South Carolina Department of Employment and Workforce. They operate the state level unit. The attachment that you had in your packet is an instruction letter from the Department of Employment and Workforce, outlining how they wanted the board seats appointed. I should probably note that we cover 3 counties as a local area, so Richland, Lexington, and Fairfield County. And so while all of these seats are required, we are also required to have representatives across the 3 counties. And so when we first got the legislation, we took a look at the seats and tried to make some distinguishing factors. Fairfield's a fairly rural county, and so we tried to be judicious in the kind of seats that they would be able to fill. Some would be more difficult for them, so we tried to be sure that we aligned that as well. We also tried to spread the number of seats sort of proportionate to the amounts of funds and the population, and so that's part of how things get a little disjointed. There are also 3 seats that you could see in your instruction letter that the state has mandated that the partner organization appoints them, and their county of residence can't be a consideration. So that added another wrinkle more recently to our challenge. So That being said, some of those seats rotate around based on where that individual person lives. Right now, the Department of Employment and Workforce representative currently lives in Richland County. In the past, they have lived in Lexington County, and that just kind of ebbs and flows, and we try to work with what we can. The Department of Vocational Rehabilitation and Commission for the Blind, for whatever reason, those folks tend to live in Lexington County. We don't know why, but that's just kind of the way it has shaken out. So that also could potentially ebb and flow. Aside from that, the seats that we have, the private sector is probably the most flexible. But what we're looking for is people that have decision-making authority in their role in their company. And so that can be in like a plant operation role. It could be in a training director role. It could be in an HR role, depending on the kind of organization and the way they're designed. But what we're looking for is somebody that can really advise us on how to design and implement employment and training programs, because that is what we do. So that's what we're looking for from the private sector. And then after that, we're looking for stakeholders in the other seats that can help us advise on the same kinds of policies and strategies. And I don't know what other kind of questions you might have. That's kind of my quick summary of what we're looking for.
So in our packet, we were provided with, it talks about the 12, and I'm referring to page 14. It talks about the 12 members that the county appoints, and then there's a proposed recommended terms of services.
Okay.
Was this something that you provided for us, or where did we get this recommendation from?
This is some, may I?
Yes.
Chairwoman Barron, this is something that we worked together with Ms. Began to try to come out to an agreement of what will be the terms that will work for them. They did have, if you look on the packet, they did have a request for them, and the request was that those 3 core organizations that are appointed, and they are specific to the South Department of Employment and Workforce and Adult Education, be terms that will follow the length of the employment of the person, and not a specific 5-year term or 3-year term. Ms. Began, would you please expand on that?
Sure. So I'll give you an example. The Department of Employment and Workforce, they have an area manager that is part of their staff, and that one person oversees the SC Work Centers and the due staff in each of those centers for the 3-county area. So that is their designee to each of the local boards across the state, is whoever that local area manager is. And so that person right now, actually the person that you appointed in February, she left in the time since then. So that seat has reopened, but they have refilled that position as well. So we have an application on file for y'all to consider for that. But that person could change at any given time. The person that we have right now, he's been with DO for about 3 years, but new to that role. He could change that role. He could be promoted. He could move to another area. Any number of things could happen. He is just as likely to be there for the next 10 years. We don't really know. And then the other seat that we're discussing for that was adult education. Was that right? That is one of the adult education directors for the school districts, and so there's one per school district. And so that person tends to stay in place for a fairly long period of time. And there aren't a lot of people to choose from. So if we ran into a lot of term limits, that could get a little tricky for us.
So to I just want a point of clarification, and Ms. Teresa, please let me know, or Mr. Weaver, if you have a question. So items D, E, and F, which is economic development, South Carolina employment and workforce, and adult education, those appointees would pretty much, they are flowing through us. Like the young lady we interviewed in November, December, she knew that she had to go through the interview, and pretty much
Correct.
she was going to be appointed, right?
Correct.
But so those 3 positions, what you're saying is there's no term limit on those individuals.
That's the recommendation, just
The
to help us streamline things.
Okay, but
the
all the
economic
rest of-
development, excuse me.
Oh, I apologize. I apologize for that. So the other ones would serve, we would have 3 from the private sector for 5-year terms and 2 for 3-year terms. The apprentice would have 2 for 5-year terms. And education would be, Midlands Tech would have a 5-year term, and career and technical education or youth education would have a 3-year term. Am I understanding that
That's the way
correct?
this is laid out, yes, ma'am.
Okay. My only concern is if we get all of these individuals with 5-year terms and we'll have to appoint them all at the same time, which we've done before.
Right.
We've had to do before, and so we want to avoid, that's the premise of this conversation, is to be able to avoid a board being vacated, let's say if no one wants to serve again. And so I almost think that maybe instead of all 3 in the private sector, or 3 having 5-year terms, maybe one with a 4-year term, something a little staggered with that. The attorney is leaning up, and then Ms. Teresa. Yes, sir.
Madam Chair. And what you could do is that the term could be 5 years, but say the first or initial appointment can be for a different term, like 3 years or whatever, so that once that 3 years is over, then it would be 5 years so all 5 wouldn't come up at the same time.
Yes, and so that would be something that the board, you all would have to, they would take ownership of that.
No, that would be
That would be here with us.
right. It would just be the only difference would be the person who's appointed initially would have a different term than normal, just so it would be staggered.
Understood.
And that's an option that we could work
Ms.
with.
Teresa,
Yeah, so I was going to suggest something like that so that we create staggered, we stagger the roll-off. And so, if we have 2 people that are, and it's not even really an even year, an odd year, because I'm used to even year terms. So, but every 5 years or every other year, we could appoint a new person so that there's right. So if there's 3 of 5 years, then we would have a one year, a 3 year, and a 5, right? So let's say in 2023, we appoint someone for the 3 years, and then we do that. Now I'm getting confused. Anyway, create a stagger in a way that we would have something come up every other year or spread out in some way.
understood. I follow, and I think you're saying what the attorney is saying. Ms. Carrillo.
Yeah, so if we see, if you look on page 9, you will see that for the private sector, you actually have 5 appointees. So from those 5, 3 will serve 5 years, and 2 will serve 3 years. So they will be staggered. It's not that all 5 of them are going to leave at the same time.
I think we understand that, but what we also are I'll speak for myself. What I also see is that there are several of the appointees have 5-year terms, and so my concern is if the 3 in the private sector and the 2 in the apprentice and the 1 from Midlands Tech all are appointed in the same year, then we would have 15 people that would no longer be on the board that we would need to replace. So that's why I go back to the statement that the attorney made. I think that's to our best interest. We keep them as they are, but moving forward, when we start to appoint, and even we have someone that we will need to interview in this upcoming round and make sure they get their application in because it's open right now.
It is.
We would need, that person would come in, well, no, that person wouldn't be involved with that because they have the unlimited time. So let me stop right there and ask this question to the attorney. Do we need to, at this point, Because your board is pretty much filled now. We filled all your spots, right?
You have a few left.
We have a few more? Okay. I was excited about having you.
You made great progress.
We have made great progress, I will say. Note, I would just go off to say, note that we are not doing interviews for the first time in 3 years. And that is because we have appointed everybody. We're caught up. So that's amazing. And Ms. Teresa, you know, because you served here before, right? So back to my question. Mr. Wright, do we, at this point, would it be to our advantage to also look at the individuals who are presently seated and start to assign terms to them, as well as the new individuals who will be coming on?
You can, because what you can do is to ensure that you have this staggered setup that you want. You can, do that with the people who are currently there and the people that are appointed. So you can determine, when you want to have to reappoint and have the first initial term to end whenever, and so to be that staggered way. So yes, you can do that.
Ms. Teresa?
Thank you. And just thinking this through, we have one person who was appointed in February and has now moved on in whatever way. And so if there are opportunities, let's just say someone is volunteering, their life is changing, kid graduates, they're going to move, retire, whatever. And so they would prefer perhaps a shorter term or something like that. Maybe that could be worked through. Does that make sense? So like, let's just say I'm serving, I have a 5-year term, but my son graduates in 4 years, and I'm going to be, going on vacation for the rest of the time, and so I would only serve the 4 years, and then that would create an opening, and so that would create a natural stagger. I guess my comment is that I'm a little bit surprised that there hasn't been more of a natural staggering, just in terms of people's lives changing and different decisions being made. So, but that has not been the case.
It's all kind of converged again.
It's all kind of converged again. So we spread out and then we snap back together.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
And I think part of that is to the point where we were so backlogged with interviews. So being backlogged with the interviews created this mess that we have in a nice, sweet way. So now we can clean it up and move forward with it. And I would imagine that there are probably, I can think of at least 2 other boards that we may want to consider doing this for as well. Mr. Wright, did you want to say something?
Yeah, no, what I was going to say is that if you want to keep this, make sure it's continually staggered, is that, for example, if someone had a 5-year term and they left after 3, you may want to appoint someone just to finish out that term so it would stay staggered, so it wouldn't be kind of changing. So you could do it that way.
Yes, that makes sense.
So any further discussion on this item? If not, there is, if the committee feels good about the recommendation as discussed here today, then we need a motion to come out of this committee to take the full council at our, not tonight, but our next meeting as a recommendation to full council.
I'm prepared to make a motion that we recommend that we move send to full council the proposed recommended terms of services for the Midlands Workforce Development Board as presented on page 14 of our packet. Is that
I'll second it. I'll second it for discussion. And so I would have a question for the attorney. Do we need to be as specific to say that we need to assign these terms for both groups? And when I say both groups, the existing board as well as anyone being appointed moving forward?
I think if you want to do the staggered thing, you probably want to kind of before it gets to full council to delineate how you want to do it. Like, how, for example, if you want to do the staggered, the initial term, when do you want that to end and all that, and have that presented to full council so that it's, the specifics are before council as well. So these are the terms, but then the initial year would be a little different because if you to do the staggered of things.
So we would need some supporting documents to kind of go along with our motion.
Right, just something to show, and it's, I guess, just somebody putting out, okay, we want the initial term to be 2 years or whatever, however many amount, so to be that staggered. And then, the following terms would be the 5 and the 3.
I'm prepared to amend my motion if you like. Does that, move forward to full council, the proposed recommended terms of services, as recommended on page 14 of our packet today, with the addition of creating an initial term of 3 years for a 5-year term and 1 year or 1 year for a 3-year term, in order to create a staggered, a board with staggering terms, expiring terms.
Second. Any discussion? If not, Ms. Carrillo?
Teratio,
Yes?
Barron,
Yes?
motion approved.
Thank you, Ms. Began.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming in and sharing your insight, and we hope that this action, once it goes to full council and it is approved or not, we're hopeful that it will be approved, that it'll bring a little more consistency to your board.
We appreciate the insight.
Have a great day. Okay, our next item of business on our agenda here, my technology ran away from me. Great. Is 4B and a request, and this is a motion that our predecessor, the Honorable Bill Malinowski, left for us, and I took on in his absence, and that's to request all boards, committees, commissions whose members are appointed by Richland County to be reevaluated, the number of members they have to serve on a particular entity in order to address their need for reduction or an increase of members to be appointed and served. And so the premise behind this motion is that for many years, we've just been operating and filling these boards based upon past recommendations. Some boards we found when we were cleaning up the rules and we were cleaning up our overviews of each of those boards, we realized that there were some boards that we didn't even need anymore. They weren't in existence anymore. And so in doing so, one of the things that we found out was that perhaps some of these boards are extremely large just because they're large, or they're small and they need more hands on deck. And so those that are not governed by any type of ordinance or governed by any type of state statute, we'd like to request that they look at what they currently have and to see if there is some additional support that they'll need in board members as far as a decrease or an increase. That is the premise behind that. And that's just, that is merely just asking, as our clerk's office communicates with those boards, committees, and commissions, to have them to just reevaluate where they are. And that is the premise. I don't think that that's one of those things that needs a motion or action, but more of a directive for our clerk's office to get with them and to reevaluate it. Any discussion on that item?
No, just to say that I support this motion, and it's probably a good idea to review your your board makeup periodically anyway, so hopefully our organizations are doing that. But just in case, this is a good opportunity.
So if there's no further discussion, we'll move on to our next item on our agenda. And that is the boards, commissions, and committees advertisement schedule. You can find it on page 15 there, and we presently have an ad running, and those items are due back to us on May what?
April 21st.
April 21st. I was thinking May like 2nd, but okay. So April 21st, they're due in, and what that would mean at this point, any applications that we get, then those will be the ones that we'll be interviewing for. So we look to start interviews on our meeting on May the 2nd. And then you'll see there the rest of the year where we will be making advertisements of any vacancies that we have. But again, I just want to lift up our clerk's office to say thank you for the work that you all have put in scheduling these interviews, scheduling our meetings, and making sure that we really get these positions filled. Thank you. We couldn't have done it without you. Excellent work, ladies.
Thank you.
Our next item.
Ms. Barron?
Yes.
Could I just ask about where, if we were to have constituents who are interested in looking for the ads and that sort of thing, where might they see them?
Recognize Ms. Carrillo.
Thank you, Chairwoman Barron. The ads are on our website, but also they are being published on the newspaper, on the state newspaper. They are being shared on our social media accounts, LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram, as well as on our website. So there are multiple ways that they can see the applications, but we highly encourage everyone to go to the Richland County website and submit their application online.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Further discussion for item 5A. If not, our next order of business are the applications that are presently on file. We'll notice that the highlighted applicants have applied for more than one board or commission. So some of them who've not been appointed in the past, we will look to, as we have those vacancies, we'll pull them. If they've not already been interviewed, we will interview them. If they have been interviewed, then they'll just show up on our interview list as being interviewed, and they will also show up in our packet so that we can refer back to their application. And Ms. Terracio, you and Mr. Branham, if there is an individual that was interviewed in the past, and as we've done, I'll be more than happy to give you insight on those applicants. Any discussion for 5B? Hearing none, our next item, 5C, is the quarterly attendance reports. And we see here that, here again, this is, I guess, give you historical information on it. We have asked all of the boards and commissions and committees that we appoint, we've asked them to submit quarterly reports of attendance, because so very often we appoint people and they don't come to meetings, and we really want people who are actively involved on these boards and commissions. What we found is that it looks like we're getting a better response from the boards, commissions, and committees of attendance records, but we still are not getting all of them and it's really not a whole lot we can do but just request, and we'll continue to request. But you'll see there, you can refer to the spreadsheet there to see the different boards and commissions as far as their attendance is concerned. And again, I want to just praise the clerk's office, because this is another task that we gave to them, and they created this online reporting system that gives us some continuity and consistency across the board. So thank you. Anything or any questions for the clerk's office in reference to those reports that are submitted? If not, our next item on the agenda is adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Second, Ms. Carrillo?
Terracio,
Yes.
Barron,
Yes,
motion approved.
we're adjourned. Thank you.